Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I rank the 1994 rookie insert designs for football. Now, when I put together the three lists for these rankings, with the football, the basketball, and the baseball and hockey barely made five between them, and then basketball was five and change. In football, we actually had 8 designs that I was able to identify. So that means there's actually a healthy list for us to look at. And it's nice that they did that, in part because there are a lot of good designs on it, but in part because it surprises me how many, even by 1994, how many insert sets that were set aside for rookies. There just weren't that many. It really does surprise me. So at least in football, we do have 8 that I identified as specifically around rookies. And it's broken down to where there's a clear top 5. And then there are 3 others, which are basically a bottom 3. And that bottom 3 is also, well, it's Fleer. In fact, the card at the bottom will be a surprise to nobody. It's the Fleer NFL Prospects cards. And this is a card that perfectly captures the stupidity of mid-90s Fleer, where they came up with so many designs. They were just trying things out, and some of them worked, and some of them, boy, they did not work. Now, I give them full credit for the concept. I really like the concept of this, which is these guys are forged out of steel. Okay, fair enough. But you have players, first off, in their college uniforms. I mean, not a good start. And then the picture of the steelworks behind is, it's a good idea, and it would have worked better if they were all defensive players. But even with the defensive players, still, they don't work together, and the card's too dark, so the player isn't very strong, and there's nothing about this card that really works. So again, the idea behind it is very admirable, but there is nothing. It doesn't feel like the card was ever designed. They just kind of slapped some stuff together and put it out there, and that's kind of what these cards were. I've never understood why they made them, and yeah, these are totally pack filler. Now, over at Ultra, they did a much better job with their first rounders cards, a much better job. The cards still have the same quality of, it is a picture of the player in his college uniform, all right, against a very contrasting background. But actually, that's something significant, is that it's contrasting. Now, the background here is a lot better. It is a very modern 1980s computer graphics design in 1994. I mean, Tron was what, 12, 13 years earlier than this? I do like this type of aesthetic. I think it's kind of cool. The spiderweb grids and the bright text and stuff, it can actually work pretty well. Unfortunately, with these cards, they didn't spend the time to make something that was really interesting, primarily because it should at least somewhat work with the picture of the player. You need to at least do that, and they didn't do that, and so there's nothing memorable about this card. It doesn't grab your attention, and it doesn't hold your attention. At least the contrast is strong, that the player stands out, but there's nothing to hold it together. So, they really weren't doing very well. And I still got one more to talk about, which is that at least they did Flair in 1994. Well, sort of. This is actually another Fleer Ultra insert. It's just Series 2. So at least now we have players in their NFL uniforms, which is good. But this little tiny set is bold, is putting it mildly. I at least like that there's consistency with these cards. It's not much, but it kind of helps. It's overly garish with the backgrounds. It almost sears your retinas. It has that kind of a strength to it. Now, I do like the Greg Hill card. There's one card in this set that I like, and that's the Greg Hill card. Apart from that, I'm not a fan of these cards. They're not the worst cards in the world, and they, I like spending time with the Ultra cards more than I like these, because there's interest with the Ultra cards. But I think that these cards look better, and I like looking at these cards, just not spending time with these cards. That's kind of the problem. But look, it's Fleer. They whiffed on all 3. But that's enough with that, so let's move on to the top 5. Now, for me, the fifth best card, the one that starts it all off, is the playoff contenders draft cards, or 94 draft pick cards. These cards are these are the ones that stand out the most by a long shot. I mean, they have that holofoil rain effect thing going on that we would see dominating Summit in the next year. Here it is on these cards, and it is magnificent. And then you have the raspberry foil on the other side. A little bit of silver text. Looks kind of cool. The combination of the two is great. It, in fact, overpowers the picture of the player. But there's nothing working together on this card at all. I mean, the raspberry foil on the side, there's too much of it. And then there's so much empty space on it. And then the incredibly boxy nature of the effect on the other side, the way the two just slam together and then it doesn't work with the player on the front. Part of the problem for me is that this is just like the subset in the regular 1994 playoff card. This is a better version of it, but still it's the same thing of it is just slapped together. And that's the problem with the card. Even though it's the flashiest one, it's the one that's going to grab your attention, the one that's going to get you most excited about the card, it doesn't have any staying power. That bugs me. And so that's why I have it here at number 5. At number 4, I have the Collector's Edge Boss Rookies. And this is almost a cheat because they had the Boss Squad cards, and the rookie cards are designed exactly the same way. They're acetate cards, and they have kind of a football field effect on it. But in the case of the rookie cards, there is the Pop Warner cards, and then there's also the Diamond Redemption cards, which technically don't count, but I'm going to go ahead and include them here because they're kind of cool. But you do get some variety with these cards that helps a lot. But what I like about these cards is the fact that there is something kind of interesting about the cards. They're not flashy, they're not going to grab your attention, but once you do look at them, I find that I spend more time with these cards than I do with the contenders cards, and I like that. But I also like the variety that they have with just a few of these cards. I think that's a fun little perk that these cards have. Still, neither of these cards are really cards that I like them both, but I don't think that they are cards that are really going to earn a strong place overall in a collection, as flashy as contenders are. And number 3, we step into another realm, which is with the Skybox Primetime Rookies cards. And here we have a card that actually does have, it has interest and it has flash combined. I love that background. It's just a bunch of team logos, all with boxes with team colors. I think that's really cool. But what makes it work is the fact that, well, there are two things. One, the placard with the player's name is a box. That's a theme that Skybox was using here. And it does a good job of kind of echoing to the boxes in the background. So you have kind of that theme going. But more than that, you have the chromed surface on the card, which normally I don't like. But in this case, both the placard and the player are not chromed, so they're very distinct. And that creates a contrast to the background. I do wish that the Skybox logo was done a little bit differently, but I'm not going to worry too much because this card, it just has such a cool look to it. And it's kind of interesting. Some of the players are in college uniforms, some are in pro uniforms. I wish it was consistent all with pro, but I'm not worried about that. But at the end of the day, it is a little bit lacking. And really, even though I praise the chroming, I wish they'd done something different to differentiate the background, because the background needed to be differentiated from the foreground. Yes, definitely. I wish they'd done something slightly different. I don't know what, but the chroming is both a strength and a weakness. When I moved to number 2, I moved to a card that is definitely not going to be on almost anybody's list of favorites, which is the Pinnacle Draft cards. Now, if I had the Dufex version of these, there might be a lot more interest, but I'm not including that because that's a redemption card. Even though, I know I showed the diamond cards with Edge, but I did that in conjunction with the rest of the cards. In this case, I just want to talk about the impact card, which is the straightforward card here, which for me, I've got to step back and say, whenever I look at these cards, this is the one I always go, oh yeah, that. I always forget it. This is incredibly forgettable. And oftentimes, well, usually that would be a mark against it. But in this case, the thing that's so great about it is every time I discover it, I get excited about these cards. They look really good. And also, if you put yourself into the mindset of somebody in 1994, excited to get their first cards of these players, these are some impressive looking cards. There's nothing distinctive and stand out about the card itself. It's very toned down, but it does such a great job of truly showcasing and putting the player right in front of you in a way that, for me, always gets me excited. That's what I like about this card. This is a card where they got the design out of the way to allow the player to really be the whole point of the card. Great, but it's certainly not number one. For me, number one comes down to the Game Day Rookie Standouts cards. And the best way to describe this is that this is a card I have no notes about. It's not the flashiest card. It is not the card that is going to be really pulling you in, but this is the card that's the most complete. It has a dominant picture of a player. It has interest in the background. It has interest in the card. The player is distinct, but not overpoweringly distinct. The first thing that's great about it is, look, it's a tall boy. Already off to a great start, but they also did a great job of showcasing the player in the card. He's not very clear, but he is clear enough that when you look at the card, you know exactly who you're looking at. But he takes up so much space. This is the one card where you're getting right up close and personal with these rookies, which is awesome. That's really what you want these game day cards to be able to do. Now you add to that the fact that the background is slightly muted, which allows him to be a little bit more clear. And then you have that explosion design around the card that over in Jam Session was a huge flaw in this card. In the case here with Game Day, they used it as more of a ghosting, which means it adds interest without really diluting the card. It's not the strongest thing about the card, but it is a little bit more of the score Crunch Crew card than it is the Jam Session Rookie Sensations cards. So this is where that's actually kind of working, but the only reason that it's kind of working is because the card is also embossed, which means now it's a card you want to explore and play around with. So it does a whole bunch of things all at once. It is a distinct card, gets you right up close and personal with the player, and it has a card that has interest to where you want to explore the card and spend time with the card. All of that is great, but at the end of the day, it also comes down to the sniff test, which is, this is the card that I always look at and go, that is so cool. This is the one I most enjoy looking at, which definitely is a great way to list it at number one. So that is my list. Now, if you feel that I absolutely should have put contenders here at number one, I absolutely get it. That's what the comments section is for. Let me know how you would have laid out this list, how you would have changed the list. Also, do look out for the poll, which I'm going to be starting tomorrow, which will give you the ability to do, I think I do the best of first and then the worst of second. And do let me know which of the top five you want me to put on the worst of list. That would be a good thing to know before I do that list. But at any rate, I will be doing the poll, so definitely look out for that. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. And thank you very much for watching.